Hey, Sage.
Hey,
Sage.
Caroline.
I see Megan's in the waiting room too, so I'm gonna let her in if that's all right.
Yep.
Sorry, I was running a few minutes. It's fine. Hey, Megan.
Hey, Caroline, how's it going?
Good. Sorry, I was running a few behind.
That's okay.
How's your day been?
Not too bad. I can't complain today.
Nice. Sage, how are you? We haven't gotten connected either.
Maintain, no complaint. I always like to say. You see me, you're the host, Caroline. I'm on my phone and my computer. I'm moving around just a little bit, but am I in a waiting room?
Oh yeah, there's two Sages. I'll admit the other Sage.
Thank
And
you.
then Megan, I just saw, I think the OneDrive.
Yeah, let me know if that one works for you.
Okay. And hopefully I can just copy this into a Google Drive. I don't have PowerPoint, but it lets you normally like open stuff. So
Yeah, I think it should let you open it in like a web browser.
shoot. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's letting me copy from PowerPoint online to, maybe Megan, what would work is if you want to just share your slides and I'll
That's
just
what that
jump
was going to be
over
my
to
next
you.
comment. If you want to just let me share my screen, let me
I think
try it
that's
real quick.
yeah. Also, Sage, that background is very beautiful and peaceful, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
getting
the
on video out
simple
there.
thing. The simple thing. Trying to get it together. I saw a hummingbird today, and earlier I was so excited.
That's super cool. I haven't seen one of those in a minute. Hey, Nelly, also.
Hi, Megan,
Nelly.
look at us on the same call at the same time. We've done
Finally, it's only taken like a decade.
it. An actual year
Mhm.
of our lives. Thank you for being here.
Of course. You know, I'm always
Excited to
happy
have
do
you on
this.
here.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. We will get lunch.
One of these days. I do still
gonna-
eat lunch every day, so
We're gonna do it one of these days. I'll text you for a time. Oh wow, Sage is really in the oasis over here.
Yeah, just a little backyard beautification.
Gorgeous. Y'all, tell me why I'm getting my fiance's prescription ready texts. He's grown up.
Make him go
Keep
get
your
him.
number.
Yeah.
It's been blowing me up all day. I'm like, I'm not Orlando.
Caroline, can you see my screen? Is it the actual presentation?
Yes, it's the actual presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna just leave it up here and not touch it because I'm gonna mess it up if I do.
Well, the one thing, sorry to throw a wrench in that, is
Right.
we
You can't.
typically do like sorry, we typically do like a 5-minute, and I think like Sage is also going to give us a grounding, and so Sage, I pulled in your graphic for that. So we would do that real quick, and then intro you, jump to you. But
okay, I got it set up over here, so I know what to click on.
Cool. Also, I don't know if it's the city's deck, but I like the design of your slide deck a lot. Or if you did.
No, this was thanks to PowerPoint and their little designer
Beautiful.
feature.
You are bold not using the city's required boring ass template.
Is this recording yet?
It is.
But we crop out anything before and after.
It's
You're
okay.
okay.
It's ugly. That's why I didn't use it.
No, it's so, I was collaborating. I did a project Y Lunch and Learn last month, and we didn't really use many slides. We were mostly Post-its and chart paper and stuff. But Valerie was like, yep, I can't even move this line. I couldn't, like, if I tried, there's nothing I can
Nope.
do. I'm stuck with this exactly how it is.
Yep, pretty much. So
Is it?
I'll probably
Do
get in
we need to
trouble
be
for it,
wearing
but I'll deal with that
bigger
later.
I'm just gonna do this for the sake of our meeting.
One second for the run. Caroline, are you introducing Megan after I do my grounding?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. So yes, or you can either way. Basically, let me show you the flow.
I would like for you to introduce. Let's switch up the voice, you know?
Sorry, what did you say?
I would like for you to introduce, to switch it up. I would like for you to introduce.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely introduce her. So I was just gonna do, you know, how we've been doing like, oh, we should think of our icebreaker too. So kind of the welcome, this is why we're here. Storms and flooding this week, and then I'll throw it to you, Sage, and you can do your grounding. And then this is the two ways we have been approaching the webinar. So first we build our knowledge, then we're learning how to share stories. And you can intro Megan, if that works for you.
Yeah, that works. And you're gonna introduce at that point?
Oh, either way, sorry, I thought you said you wanted to, but yeah.
No. I'd rather switch the voice up a little bit at that point.
Yeah.
Got a little transition, that's all.
Cool. Awesome. Megan, any other last minute questions? We got a few minutes actually, so not last minute.
I don't think so. I'm good. I'm ready.
Awesome.
I'll try to keep my little fidget spinner out of the camera view.
That's okay. You go for it. Mine is always, you guys know those like magnet screen doors?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have in my back, like the room that I'm in. It also, like, if I don't do this, it's just like a dark hole. So I'm like, it has to be like that. And my dog just runs in and out all the time. And somehow he's managed to get out recently, even though there's like virtually no way to get out. And I think I blocked it off enough, but I'm just always kind of like, but if I don't have it, like, you better be back. But if I don't have it open, then it's, that really, I just don't have, oh, Chucho.
I was gonna say, now you gotta pay the dog tax, Caroline.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna get him. Hoppy.
Caroline and I are gonna be neighbors, and our dogs are buds.
That's
Hoppy.
exciting.
You knew it a spade, and he got his con on his head. He aggravated right now. So
Well, I know he mad. Oh my God.
Hop. Sorry guys about the mess, but Hoppy.
Is his name Hoppy because he's got 3 legs?
He came with that name, and I was like, I'll rename him, and I never renamed him. He's still Hoppy, and
And he's a perfect little angel. Yes.
Did it just feel fitting for him?
it is. He's like a goofball, and
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, when I got mine, his name was Ernie, and I was like, this feels so right. I can't take that name away from you.
Yeah. They say the 2 syllables is like you want your dog's name to have 2 syllables.
Yep.
Lincoln, Ernie, Chucho, Hoppy. Should have like a dog club.
I would show you mine, but he's in the back, locked up in the room with my girlfriend, so he doesn't start barking at everyone that passes by.
What type of dog is it?
He's a mutt. No idea.
Yeah.
I got him from Take Paws Rescue, like right as COVID started. So who knows?
Yeah. Oh, Nelly, you're on mute if you're trying.
He's a cutie little floof.
He's adorable. I don't know if you can see this, but.
Oh my God, the ears.
Right? Oh, that's weird.
No.
The blurred background just did that.
Sage, Lincoln been doing good? Sorry.
yeah, Lincoln just got new with a spade, whatever. He got clipped. yeah, he aggravated. He caught on his head. He bumping into everything.
Poor
He
thing.
frustrated. So You know, because I'm traveling too much, you know, with the work, and so he had to go to the boarding school. So that's a requirement.
Yeah.
You know, so,
Poor thing.
and he's a straight too. I think he mixed more of the child in the lab. We call him Lincoln because he came out and he walked up to me, you know, Lincoln Beach and Lincoln. So
Very fitting.
in 2 syllables.
And 2 syllables.
This is kind of like a dark joke, but apparently when they had to, because Hoppy, they had to take his leg. I didn't have him at the time I got him after, but when they had to take his leg off, apparently they also neutered him. And I was like, he probably woke up and was like, what happened?
Oh, poor guy. So what a terrible way to wake up.
But honestly, he doesn't even notice.
That's a
Todd.
bad day.
Odd.
What a weird name.
Yeah.
Is this an icebreaker? You know, put your pet name, if you have a pet, put your pet name in the chat. I don't know if you want to talk about your pet. I don't know.
Or tell us your funny pet story, or
Yeah, I would say that flooding, we don't want to do a like, what kind of anything would you be like? It's too traumatic, I think, as a general concept. So keeping it light and maybe even like not even super relevant would be.
Yep. I agree.
you want to do pets, Sage? I
Yeah.
like. I like the pets name. We could say like, it's beautiful weather. You got pets, you're walking your pets, or you're enjoying outside time with your pets. Something like that. Or we could do like favorite show to go here, because I feel like there's all this music in town.
Who you're
or-
looking forward to, what musician you're looking forward to seeing soon at Jazz Fest or elsewhere.
Mhm.
That was a fun one.
It's festival season.
Shucks.
Yep.
Who you're looking forward to seeing. I think that's the
We outside. We outside. What musician you want
There
to
you
see?
go.
What festival you want to go to? What food you want to go out and eat? And I let you enjoy
Yeah.
this beautiful weather.
Yeah, great.
We outside.
I had a donor meeting set up for Thursday afternoon, and he called me on Monday saying, like, hey, I realized that I don't have any other day to go to Jazz Fest. So can we just meet at Jazz Fest? I was like, yep,
I love New Orleans for that reason.
yep, sure. I'll pick you up. Great. We could talk in the car. Sounds good.
That's nuts.
And at the gate, we gonna walk through.
Oh, that's great.
So that's 2 happened this Thursday, not was
That's
last.
happening this coming
Oh,
this
Nelly,
Thursday, which means I'll get to see Leon Bridges after all.
Oh, there you go.
Nelly,
I'm very
wow.
excited to hear the debrief on this. Like, I want to know what you guys were watching while
I know.
you know.
Nelly, you get your Jazz Fest in. I ran into Nelly the other day at Jazz Fest.
Yeah, I went in on Sunday. Honestly, like I wouldn't have had I not been offered a cheap ticket. But because there was nobody I was really excited to see. But I did get to close the day out at Jill Scott, which was like,
There you go.
There
Yeah.
you go. I'm gonna take a long walk.
she played Golden at Golden Hour, and it was like,
That's cool.
Chef's
it
kiss.
was so good.
Sage, you went to Jazz Fest this past weekend?
Yeah, we slipped in right quick. You know, I'm a local, so I don't buy tickets. If nobody gonna give me a ticket, slide me in. I'm saying I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't go to the box office. You know, they closed the hole in the fence on us. So, yeah, close the hole in the fence. I'm a local. So I remember $35. Now, don't get me wrong. The price is worth the price. Don't get me wrong. All those venues, all those people, all that food, one place, it's worth it. It just, you know.
All right, so Nelly's gonna refill her water. We got 1 minute, and then we'll open up and do some icebreakers. And Sage, once we start, or maybe we've already started, I'll make you the host.
Did we disable the waiting room so people could just fall in? I never did that, but
Yeah, I'll do that, and then I'll make you host right after that. How about that? All right, and so Megan, we'll intro you and you'll share slides, and then after you're done, we'll kind of open the conversation up. I'm gonna warn you guys, we can thank Julia also for this. We're geeking out in the second half on flooding tracking. We're geeking out harder than most stages. It's a bit different. It's more interesting for sure than like the format, because I've gotten to a bit of redundancy. This one's different, a little more technical, but also interrupt me if it's just like too long. Or we can be like break convo, and then like if anyone wants to stay on and geek out for 15 minutes, we can do that. If
All right,
I'll
send you a direct message to see how I notice people's faces, attention span, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting than the previous ones I've done. It's just at the most risk of running over because there's so much to talk about.
How long do you want? What I can time you. How long you want your presentation to be? 15 minutes? 20?
I mean, I think it's just whatever time we switch over, and we should probably open up in a second. Whatever time we switch over, just, you know, if I'm like hitting 7 o'clock and don't seem like I'm to that point where I'm asking the finale questions and doing our
All
next steps, then you can say like, hey Caroline, like let's let people go, you know, that kind of thing. But I'll try really hard. I'll be paying attention. Just
I'll slide in. You know, it's me sliding in.
just don't be afraid to interrupt me, was all I was saying.
No, it won't be hard. But
I can keep going for the recording, but we can like let people
I
jump
got you.
on in their time. Yeah. Okay.
I got
I'm gonna open up and then make you say the host. Oh. Hey everybody, welcome. And Sage, I'm making you host. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the session, Eyes on Infrastructure. Really excited to have you guys here. We're gonna wait a few minutes for everyone to arrive, and we've been exploring some fun icebreakers in the past weeks. And today we wanted to know, do we land on music or food? I think we were saying Sage.
You said my magic word, food and music. So the idea was it's festival season. A lot of people are going Jazz Fest. Some people want the French Quarter Fest. You know, it's festival season. How you enjoying the festival season? How you enjoying some food? How you enjoying some music? We outside. How you enjoying outside? That's what we want to know. It's festival season as well. So how you enjoying outside? Where you going to eat at? Where you going to hear some live music at? You know, what's going down tonight? What's going down next week? And you can put some of that in the chat. And then before we start up, we'll get a couple of feedback, y'all report out. Think about it. It's beautiful outside, you see? And thank y'all for some returning participants. I appreciate y'all coming with us through the whole series. And you all got I'm sure you all got a great education. And we'd love to hear your feedback after the series over with. I know I've been learning a lot.
And while we do this, Sage, I'm just gonna make sure, if you can make sure our recording's running and direct it to the cloud, that'd be great. Oh, you're on mute. I'm missing it. You got it.
Recording is moving. I see it. I can, it's moving, so it is recording. I can stop recording and start it again if you want a fresh one.
All good as long as it's going. I saw also Nelly is going to Jazz Fest, Leon Bridges tomorrow. I think that's a great start. I'm sure a few of us are doing some Jazz Fest stuff this week. I know there's also a ton of other music in town / always is. So Robert's stuck in Atlanta. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe there's probably great music in Atlanta though.
I did enjoy Jazz Fest. I went to Jazz Fest this past weekend. You know, I love people watching. People watching is the number one attraction in New Orleans. I love it, and I love just standing out in the background, running across people. You never know who you're gonna see. Who here go Nelly? Hey, here go this person. Here goes somebody I don't know their name, but they know me quite well. Hey, how you doing, sir? But I just love people watching, get to know people. It's the best way to live, like network and build relationships. You know, it's a reunion time. It's a time to get to know new people you just bump into. So I love it.
Oh yeah, also the live Jazz Fest stream on WWOZ is pretty sweet. Forgot to mention Robert. Right, so we'll just give another minute for everyone to come in, and then we'll jump into today's session. About your boy Vladimir Putin and what he's doing to Ukraine. They're literally women killing children. Anyone else, Jordan? What shows are you seeing this weekend? I know you got something going on. Not to call you out.
Oh, I put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Sorry,
going,
missed
I'm
that.
going to Jazz
Jazz
Fest on
Fest.
Saturday.
Nice.
That's oh, and LSD Clown System is tonight, but I'm not going to that.
Well, I'm going on Frenchman tonight as well. It's Wednesday. You know, my calendar was pretty booked back to back. Dragons Den, reggae night. You know, it's always good to get on the balcony and see that. So you know, shameless plug. You know, walk the strip, walk. And I love Frenchman Street because it's like a radio station. You know, you get to dip in and out. You got different tunes as you walk up and down the street. It's a place for locals and tourists. So it's a great and it's a safe place. Nothing go down on Frenchman, no. So not going to wood, but I love Frenchman Street. On at a night.
It's a great central spot. All right, I'm gonna jump in. As folks join us, they can hopefully come up to speed. So real quick, I'll share my screen. So welcome back to the final session on Eyes on Infrastructure. Thank you for those who've joined us for a few weeks. As you know, Committee for Better New Orleans, Healthy Gulf, and ISeeChange have been putting on this series over the weeks. We're grounded in this time that there's a huge opportunity among us in the United States. There's hundreds of billions of dollars, not trillions of federal infrastructure funding coming down. And the question is, where is that money going to be distributed throughout the country? We see this as a huge opportunity for New Orleans. And one of the key things we want to focus on is ensuring that this is equitably distributed throughout the city. The funding is going to the right neighborhoods to work on the right problems. Each week we've been focusing on a different topic and it's related to climate or infrastructure. And this week we're going to be talking about storms and flooding, which I know is in the hearts and minds of many of us here in New Orleans. To kind of ground us and why this is so important, I'm going to pass it over to Sage Michael for a minute.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, this is me learning to live with water. For me, you know, like you see a couple of pictures. I'm born and raised in New Orleans. I'm with Healthy Gulf. I'm fortunate to be the New Orleans Climate Justice Organizer. That's why I work with to help New Orleans flood less and really to a just transition into a grid where we could really like have energy, sustainable energy to power our pumps really, so we don't flood. So here it is. You know, usually the news camera capture me for some reason. On the top one to the left, that's me on Claiborne Avenue. This in despair. One time, you know, I was on Claiborne and it just flooded. I was moving someone and I stopped and I was like, it's looking like Venice. And you know, I said to myself, why we can't look like Venice? Why we can't look like Amsterdam? Why not us? And so, but what you see is the trauma in my face. And so on the bottom picture, you see me, that's in my neighborhood. That was recently. There's some flash floods that's happening and my streets flooded. I couldn't get to work. Uber rental car had flooded out. And I'm just in like trauma and despair. So like, this is the things I'm starting to live it on a regular basis. Like that can happen again, like at any moment right now on my street facing that. But in other picture, you see how we can live with water in a different way. I'm teaching a young lady to kayak in our waters of Meagan Beach. And so, you know, too many times we taught to fear water in so many ways, you know, I'll fear our water bill, how much it costs us, fear fear it breaking up our streets and giving potholes, fear of a hurricane come taking us out and not really be able to recover. So we need to learn how to live with water. And today we're gonna have a great presentation by some great people. And this is what we must do. How do we learn to live with water? How do we learn from the past, take what we learned, the innovations of today, and how we do move forward to make sure these pictures on the left don't happen anymore, and more pictures on the right happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sage. And as you know, if you've been taking part in this series, we've been approaching each topic in 2 ways each week. First, we're building our knowledge. We're hearing from local folks on the ground who've been working on these issues at the city level, nonprofit level, community leaders. And in the second half of the session, we'll learn how we can share our stories to make an impact together. So I'll pass it over to Meagan Williams. Meagan is an engineer and also stormwater program manager with the city of New Orleans. And Meagan, we're really, really grateful to have you on and talk to us about flooding today. So I'll let you, I know you're going to share your slides. Stop my screen.
Give me 1 second. Let me make sure I do this right. All right, can y'all see that? Got it? All right, well, thank you, Caroline and Sage and Nellie, for inviting me to this. It's always fun to talk about what we're doing and how we as a city are trying to move forward with some of the huge issues that we are facing. One of the biggest being flooding. I don't think anyone here is a stranger to some of the floods that we've been experiencing. And lately we've been seeing a lot of non-hurricane related flooding, which is a bit abnormal, for us as the city. It's starting to happen a lot more frequently. So why are we so vulnerable to flooding? A couple of reasons. There's no one reason. There's no, big glaring reason. It's a combination of a couple of things. For one, we were built on a swamp and marshland, which you can see here. And if you look at these sort of dotted areas, this is all the original marshland. And then over here on the right, you can see we built streets and roads and homes on top of it, which was never a good thing. The long-term effects of that we are starting to see many years down the line. Down here in this sort of like central city-ish area, you can see their swampland even extending that far. Additionally, because we sit on that swampland, we sit on very soft soils. We sit on clay soils. Clay does not like water by any means. It doesn't like to be overly saturated for a long time. It doesn't like to have water in it, as well as heavy objects like a road or a home on top of it. And you can see on the left, the healthy soil has a good structure. It allows water to infiltrate kind of between the void spaces. It's got a really high organic matter. And the degraded soil, which is normally what we deal with, has a fairly weak structure. There's no infiltration or very little, and water runs off of it quickly. And those are the three things I want you to keep in mind as we go through this. So the clay soils, and this picture on the right is just kind of a cross section, is that we sit on soft clay and buried sand beaches. So sometimes clay is on top of sand, and sand doesn't really have a good structural capability like some other soils. So now we look at the elevation profile. Everybody has heard New Orleans is a bowl. We sit below sea level. If we were to cut the city in half from Lake Pontchartrain to the Mississippi River, this is kind of what it would look like. We have a levee system on one side at the Mississippi River, actually sheet pile walls. And on the opposite side, we have Lake Pontchartrain. So we have these two really large structures that stand up straight, and we sit at the bottom of them. And the reason we had those structures is to protect us from river flooding. Way back in the 1800s, something like that, the levees were built to protect the settlement from the established settlements where people were living from the Mississippi River flooding those homes. But what has happened because of that is we've trapped a city that's sinking inside of a bowl. So additionally, speaking of sinking, subsidence, one of our biggest and greatest contributors to flooding. There is a natural settlement that occurs in the sinking of land. However, it happens at a fairly constant rate over time. the man-made side of subsidence is what's causing a big part of our problem. We drain the wetlands. So all those wetlands that I just showed you that we originally inhabited and built homes upon played a really vital role into land development, for one, because of the deposits of sediment from the Mississippi River. But what they did was kind of allow water to kind of sit beneath us and kind of float the city almost. And what we've done, because we've walled in where the city is, and now we have to pump water up and over the levee system, we're pulling all of that water out of the soil at a very rapid rate. And what happens is, if you've ever taken a kitchen sponge and sat it next to the sink for any period of time, it'll dry out and it'll shrink. And then when you rehydrate it, it grows in size. And that's what our soils are doing, except with homes and roads and schools and hospitals and everything else on top of it. So we've exacerbated the subsidence side of things to a fairly great extent. And one of the biggest factors that we as the experts, as well as the community, is really starting to talk about is climate change. New Orleans is one of the wettest places in the United States. I don't think any of us are strangers to that. And if you look back to 2021, the spring of 2021, I believe we had our third wettest spring in the history of recording these rainfalls. So what we're seeing is that on an annual basis, New Orleans gets about 62 inches of rain. We're still getting that number. It's just how quickly we get to that number. We're having these really, really heavy rains that just kind of, inundate us in a really short period of time. And what that does, we're having less wet days because we're getting that accumulation of rainfall in a very short period of time, but we're having more dry days, which means that soil is continuing to dry out. So we kind of have this problem where we need to balance the two. The fifth wettest spring, I'm sorry. So as Sage mentioned, we have a lot of evidence of what these storms look like, dating back to August 2017, which was really a big catalyst for change for the city. Circle Food Store, that photo in the middle, has often been a victim of flooding in our area. The one on the left, I believe, is Mid-City. And if I'm not mistaken, the photo on the right is at one of the 610 underpasses. And then you skip to 2019, and it's the same thing. Mother's Day of 2019. I think almost everyone woke up that morning not expecting it to be the way that it was. And it was a surprise for just about everyone. And again, jump to 2020. As much as we, are a city that is surrounded by water, we now have too much water. We have an excess of water right now. And, everyone loves to pull out their kayaks and make light of the situation, which is kind of a blessing and a curse for us, because there's, like Sage said, there's a lot of trauma around living with water the way that we have in the past. So to give you an example of what we're doing right now is the New Orleans drainage system. We have over 1,800 miles of pipe, 160 miles of open canal, 100 miles of subsurface canal, 72,000 catch basins. The list goes on. And I say that to say this built environment that we keep talking about kind of exacerbates the problem as well. We are also an overdeveloped city, which means we are highly impervious. So when water doesn't have a place to go, it's going to go straight up. It's going to go vertical. And because we have so much pavement and asphalt and, we are very densely populated, we don't have a lot of green space. And because of that, water is going to go vertical. So right now we're relying fully on our pump stations. And I know most people don't think of it this way, but if you look at it from an engineering perspective, our pump stations are actually a little bit of an engineering marvel. For the size that they are and what they are tasked to do, there are very few, if any, other places in the world that have designed a system like this. And while they work, they were never designed to handle as much water as we're seeing in such a short period of time. So we're overtaxing a system that was never meant to handle as much as it is. So what else can we do? The way that I typically think about what we can do is the multiple lines of defense strategy. Most people forget that New Orleans is actually a coastal city, even though we are surrounded by levees. Our coastal system is actually the first line of defense for all of pretty much Louisiana and some of our surrounding areas. The barrier islands, all of our marshlands, all of those ecosystems that are within those areas, those are really the first line of defense when a storm comes up off of the Gulf of Mexico. Second is green infrastructure, and a lot of that is kind of catching water where it falls before it even gets to our drainage system. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Second is our drainage system, the pipes that are under the ground, and our pump stations and our catch basins. And then last but not least is our pump stations. I should have put levees on there as well, but our pump stations for the sake of time. So green infrastructure is the mission that we are on right now as the city of New Orleans. And what green infrastructure is sort of a man-made way of mimicking what nature does when left alone. If you go into a forest or a place with a lot of untouched, uninhabited green space, there's very little flooding. In most places throughout the United States and even elsewhere, these overdeveloped areas are seeing a lot of flooding. You can look at, I'll give an example, New York City during Hurricane Ida. It's very rare that a hurricane makes it across land from Louisiana all the way up to New York City. And New York is another place that is highly, highly, highly impervious. Very little green space except for, I think, Central Park, which is in one location. Again, having very little perviousness, allowing water to infiltrate into the soils, it's going to take the path of least resistance. And we saw a lot of flooding from Hurricane Ida. And the threat of hurricanes is also a big part of the climate change. For most people who have kept count, I think in the year 2021, we were in the cone of uncertainty, maybe like 7 times, something like that. That's a huge number for one city. And that's not even for a city that got hit by all 7 of those. Some of our neighboring cities actually have been hit by those. So add that to the climate change list. So part of green infrastructure is rain gardens, which I'll show you in a minute, permeable pavement, detention ponds, and a big part of it that meets a couple of different needs is the increased tree canopy. And I believe part of the series also has been some of the increased tree canopy that we are trying to see right now. And then there's the gray infrastructure system where we can upsize drainage, but there's a very finite space where we can upgrade drainage. Pretty much all of our drainage is within the public right-of-way, and there's a lot of things that exist in there. So it's not just as simple as let's upgrade the pipes. That's also very expensive, and the lifespan of that does not always meet our needs. In addition to that, utilizing more sustainable materials within our gray infrastructure, materials that may last longer, materials that are a bit more resilient in handling the influx of drainage that they are trying to see. And then, of course, always working on the pump stations, upsizing as much as is possible and making our pump stations as efficient as possible. So a big part of what we've been doing over the last 10 years really is adhering to the Greater New Orleans Urban Water Plan. This was released in September of 2013. There's many, many documents that you can read, but they're like 200 pages. So the short and quick of it all is the mindset behind it really came from the Dutch and the folks in the Netherlands. And the idea is to retain water, so really to catch it where it falls, to detain it, hold it for a little bit of time before we put it into the drainage system, really allowing the hardest part of the storm to pass before we put that water back into the system, and then to drain it, but at a very, very slow rate so as not to continue overtaxing the pump stations. Over the last, I guess, 4 years, we've installed a couple of projects, one of them being the Hagen-Lafitte Drainage Project. This project is in Mid-City. And at Easton Park, which is not far from the Lafitte Greenway, I believe it's like a block and a half from the Lafitte Greenway, there's a there is a tank system that's installed underneath the park. So on a day like today where it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, there's probably kids out there playing right now on Easton Park. If you look back to the previous weekend when we had all that rain, all of these tanks will fill up with water and hold that water that has been spread out through the neighborhood for a lot of these storms. And we do have evidence that it's a bowl within a bowl. So this area of Mid City sits below the adjacent neighborhoods. And then by installing rain gardens, we've upsized some of the drainage system. We've added permeable pavement in the form of sidewalks, and we added some bioswale. So in total, that project can hold about 2 million gallons of water. And another example is the Pontilli Stormwater Network, which has 7-ish implementation methods for green infrastructure: pervious parking lanes, stormwater lots, which were lots that were owned by the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, that were donated back to the city, particularly for this project, and we turned them into detention ponds. There's a large bioswale / detention pond at Bartholomew Golf Course. This in and of itself can hold just under 1 million gallons of water. And then if you look further, I'll go back just a second. This is some of the green alleyways that was implemented. These are permeable pavers, so it allows water to kind of seep through the cracks of the pavement, and keep these areas accessible to either cars or pedestrians, whichever it was designed for. And that photo on the bottom is one of the stormwater lots that exists right now. So with all of these implementations, this stretches from the Pontchartrain Park neighborhood all the way to Gentilly Woods. There's about 8 million gallons of storage within this neighborhood, which for a little bit of context is like 250,000 bathtubs worth of water that we are holding that's not being put into the system right away. And we're continuing to move forward in our vision for detain, retain, and drain with the urban water plan. We do have quite a few future projects that are coming, the Mirabou Water Gardens, and all of these are within the Gentilly Resilience District area. So Mirabou Water Gardens, which will store about 10 million gallons of water, Blue-Green Corridors, which stretches on Allen Toussaint all the way down to Fillmore and through Elysian Fields, St. Bernard Neighborhood Campus, St. Anthony Green Streets, which is an interesting that really shows the picture of the gray and the green infrastructure that we are trying to implement. The Pontilli neighborhood, we are adding some things to the Pontilli project, and the Dillard Wetlands, which will store about 5.2 million gallons of water. There's a lot more features to it, but this also says reducing mosquitoes. And last but not least are our community partnerships. A big part of what we do that will make us successful is partnering with the community groups. And I think this will lead into what Caroline and Sage will be talking about in a minute. The community is such a big part of what we do and how we do it and how effectively we can do it. So by partnering with community organizations, which there are quite a few, Healthy Gulf, Waterwise, Healthy Community Services, the list goes on and on, but what we are trying to do is assist these community organizations in developing plans and projects within their respective areas, because they are the ones who's a bit more of a voice than we as the city are. They can communicate a bit more effectively with the community than we sometimes can as the city. And we are working to empower them to continue to do the work and allow them to lead the charge at a different scale. And one of the ways that we do that is to leverage some of the visions to apply for grant funding. There's a lot of grant funding that is available through EPA, through NOAA, through the National Science Foundation. There's a lot of money that's available. And for us, a big part of how we get that funding is to be able to create meaningful relationship with our community partners. And then, like I said, kind of to develop these projects and visions, And part of that is a unified GIS database of green infrastructure projects, which means collecting data a lot of the time, which I think Caroline may be talking about in just a moment. And hopefully soon we will be starting a call for proposals. We, many years ago, not many, I guess about 2 years ago, we had something called the Resilience Design Review Committee meeting, in which both city projects and community projects, particularly for our community-based organizations, were presented to all of the city departments at one time, so you could get that approval that you need right then and there. We are hoping to relaunch that in a bit more effective manner than it has been. I don't have a timeline on that, but we are in the process of rethinking what it needs to look like and how to make it effective. With that said, I will turn it over to, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna turn it over to Sage and Caroline.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Thank you so much. Now
Okay.
we'll have an open discussion time. Yeah, I mean, clap it up for Megan. I'm sorry, I'm about to knock the computer off the table. Thank you so much for that. We can have open discussion time if you mind putting some comments in the chat, and we can have a few people report out. I'm gonna take a little bit of privy right quick. When I got on the Healthy Golf, I looked through when I was on board on the Greater New Orleans Water Plan, and I saw a concept of transforming the canals. And I was really excited about that concept, and I'm working now with community partners to actually bring that to a reality as far as transforming canals in New Orleans East. Could you speak about how that plan and any other partners from that plan, have they been making any headway? And I'm really looking forward to that call for proposals from the city. And I think y'all have an awesome Department of Resilience, Chief Resilience Officer, Mr. Joseph Threat, and other people that work along with you all. So any response to that? And put some things in
Yeah,
the chat, please.
yeah, a big part of the urban water plan when it was originally established was to create a more open canal system. So that is a big part of water management in the Netherlands, is that they have a ton of open canals. We have pretty much the exact opposite, where we've closed in our canals. There's discussion about the Lafitte Greenway. Actually, West End Boulevard used to be a very open canal. It's actually like one of the major ports for trading, and it's been closed in. There's some logistic issues with it, but it is still part of the conversation of how we make that happen in a very strategic way, because it's a lot more complicated than I think was originally thought through. But it's an ongoing conversation. Ongoing recently as of like last month. We are still having the conversation and trying to figure out how to, from an engineering perspective, how to actually do what we needed to do, and also to keep the size of that project at a manageable size, because it can get very large and overwhelming pretty quickly.
I also saw in the chat, could you talk more about the challenges in getting some of these done, as far as like projects done, like money, for instance, New Orleans already pays so much in taxes. There's
One would
federal
think we're
money
swimming in
coming
dough,
in.
but we're not. All of the
Let's talk
projects that
about
I
some of those
mentioned,
misconceptions a little bit.
yeah, all of the projects that I mentioned so far, those are federally funded projects. So we're relying heavily right now on federal funding, which is, it can be both of a blessing and a curse. With federal funding often comes the red tape. There's a lot of checks and balances from a lot of different people that we have to go through, and sometimes that can cause some pretty significant delays in a project. So in terms of funding, because there is so much funding available through grants right now, we're really trying to go after that type of funding. We do have 2 folks in our office who are primarily focused on grant funding and partnering and facilitating those relationships that I mentioned. So right now we are heavily relying on federal funding and even some state funding, because there's often like a match program. Moving forward, we are trying to be a bit more strategic in how we plan for bond funds. Bond funds is typically the next pot of money that we would go to for such a large scale project. And I believe also a part of what's being proposed, it goes back to the community partnerships, because EPA has probably 5 or 6 different types of grants that we could apply for. I know everyone's always thinking about the infrastructure grant that's coming out, the big ISeeChange bill, but there's not a whole lot that's built into it for stormwater. So we're trying to be creative in some ways that we can apply for different funding.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for pointing out the fact that your department has dedicated staff just for funding. We understand it could be complicated and you have people directly working for that. I know your partner, there are other people, Mary Kincaid, who work in that office as well, who also work towards these green infrastructure projects. And there are grants that, as far as government grants, community-based grants, and you all are working trying to match those partnerships and reaching out to organizations. Could you speak a little bit more about the maintenance of some green infrastructure projects? I don't see anything else in the chat right now, but you mentioned a lot of projects. How is it with the engagement with the community for educating them on these new plants? Because they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm gonna cut over it. Implementation and the upkeep. We have a lot of projects that are laid out, and if it's not upkept, then that storage capacity is decreased tremendously. An opportunity how that could provide jobs for you or anyone.
Yeah, of
other
course.
businesses.
So a couple of things. One, maintenance is always the bane of everyone's existence. It's one of the hardest things to talk about and to plan for. One of the really difficult things about federal projects is that they don't include funding for maintenance. So that often falls on us as the city agency to find funding for it. And because this is also pretty new as far as the implementation of these projects. This is still fairly new for us as a city of New Orleans. So we're in a period where we're looking in the mirror and figuring out what has worked, what hasn't worked, kind of a lessons learned thing. But right now, what we are in the process of doing is building out the comprehensive citywide maintenance manual. And that will include very specific maintenance for every feature within a project, the frequency of maintenance, and the cost of maintenance. Maintenance is expensive, but that's also how you extend the lifespan of things. It's cheaper to maintain something rather than to replace it. Which, if you think about it from the perspective of like your car, it's going to cost you money to maintain it, but it's better than having to buy a new car because something breaks on it and it's irreplaceable. So we are working on the citywide maintenance manual that will include the cost, the maintenance, that's both regular maintenance and then the restorative, which is, it's been left alone. It's not really functioning the way that we wanted to. We need some sort of measure to go back to restore this to what its original function was. So that is a big part of maintenance. And Sage, you hit it just a second ago, is the education piece. We haven't always done a great job of educating on the front end for these projects, especially. It's often been kind of retroactively. And again, we're in the process of learning. And what we've learned is to engage and educate early and often as much as possible. The communities often know a lot more than I think they're given credit for, but the why behind things is often the education that's needed. I think sometimes when it comes down to the science and technology of things, there's a lot more information available that people have read through. Sometimes it's the why. Why did you put this project here? Why did you decide this? Why did you decide that? That we have to be very strategic in how we answer those questions and to be not just strategic, but to be transparent about it as well.
Thank you. So I know that last week we had a call with Soul, and they talked about the trees, the reforestation plan and projects that could help out with flooding as well. Could you talk about, just for touch on that, how does it help? Because we talk about how we have this whole heat impact where everything's concrete, trees are gone from Katrina, and you barely have any trees left. And we talk about Soul on that end, but what about that for us flooding reduction? And then also, Ms. Arthur says, are we working together with other parishes? St. Bernard with Chalmette, they have disasters. We also support them in Jefferson Parish right there. Because sometimes during Katrina disasters, sometimes we see those borders are cut off. And do we have those better relationships?
Let me touch on the trees first. Just about all trees have some sort of absorption capacity. The bigger the tree, the larger that capacity is. So we want to utilize trees, and trees serve a whole ton of different benefits, offer a ton of different benefits to an area. I'm sure Sol probably talked about the urban heat island effect. So it can help reduce the temperature. Depending on the type of trees and the density, it can help like sequester carbon from the atmosphere. But in terms of water management, especially for these big like oak trees and big cypress trees, one of the benefits of Louisiana is that we do have a lot of native species that actually really like to be wet because we're a swampland. So part of the green infrastructure initiative is let's identify the right type of trees and plants that can help with that absorption rate. Now, it may not help drain a pond, right? But in a regular rainfall, you're certainly going to get some of that absorption from the trees. And as those trees, and it helps the trees grow, right? So as the trees grow, that tree canopy will increase, which again will help reduce the amount of heat in a certain area, bringing that urban heat island effect way, way down. And if you go back to science class, probably in middle school, where we talked about evapotranspiration, trees add that to it as well. As far as working with other parishes, it's kind of a yes and no answer. Because New Orleans is so isolated sometimes in our levee system, a lot of the times when we work with other parishes, especially for grants, you have to show benefit that extends beyond just your immediate footprint. And sometimes that can be hard to do because we don't always go into Jefferson Parish, or especially not the North Shore, Lake Pontchartrain is there, but we do work together in terms of sharing ideas. Jefferson Parish just released their Green Infrastructure Master Plan. Jefferson Parish and St. Tammany, I believe Plaquemines as well, is part of the original Urban Water Plan. So a lot of it is kind of a back and forth between all of us, kind of understanding what is out there, what works, what doesn't work. So a lot of our communications and collaboration is sharing the wealth of knowledge that we all have.
I understand
You asked
that.
another question and I forgot it already. I'm sorry.
No, you covered that. And this last question, and then we'll get to Carolyn's presentation. Just briefly touch on it, because this is a whole nother thing. How do we pay for this? We know that it's costing us, it's costing everyone. People don't know how it's paid for. Just briefly, there's an idea, a movement about a stormwater fee. Water Collaborative is working on that. Is your office in touch with that? And can you touch on that for like 1 minute? So
Yeah, of course. So the Water Collaborative is really leading the charge on the stormwater fee, or actually, I believe it's the Water Justice Fund is now what it's called. And yes, we are in touch with them. Not only are we in touch, we sit on the advisory committee, on the steering committee. We meet with them regularly. So, and I believe the intention, don't quote me on this because I'm not leading the charge on it, but I believe the intention is to utilize the funding that is collected from whatever that fund becomes to help fund future projects. We don't have a regular revenue stream for that right now, which is something we're trying to figure out. So a big part of where we are right now at this point in time is looking through all the things that we wish would have been in place when we first started these initiatives. All the projects that I mentioned were part of the Urban Water Plan. That's how we received the grants for all of those things. So looking forward, we're trying to figure out a way to be a bit more self-sufficient. As much as we love federal funding because of the amount that we can get, like I said, there's a lot of red tape and it can stall projects and really delay the timeline. But we are working with the Water Collaborative. Like I said, we're sitting in on the meetings as often as possible that meets our schedules. I know sometimes they're after work, so it can be a little bit hard. But yes, they have a steering committee and an advisory committee, I believe, are the two names. And I believe someone from our office sits on both of them.
Yeah, thank you. And some members been going to their workshops they've been given, and they're going to be doing a lot more work now. And talk about self-sufficiency. I think that's a great way to transition to Caroline to bring up ISeeChange. And what ISeeChange does with helping us being more self-sufficient as community members, collecting data and having our stories connected with that.
Thanks, Sage, and thank you, Meagan, so much for joining us. If you guys have more questions for Meagan, keep dropping them in the chat. We can keep the conversation going. We're going to dive into the second half of the session. I'm just going to share my screen.
And just a note, we may run a few minutes over, but we may finish the presentation, but any questions, please hang on for a few minutes, if you may.
Definitely. And if I move fast, check out, we'll send the recording for this session and all the previous ones. You guys will have access to that. So thank you, Megan, again. We've spent the first half of the session building our knowledge. Now we're going to talk about how we can share our stories. If you've been with us before, you know this spiel. ISeeChange is a platform powered by our community where you can share your stories on climate and infrastructure experiences. We connect your experiences to solution bringers, decision makers like cities, engineers, nonprofits, and researchers in the area. And this week we're talking about how you can track flooding on ISeeChange. So this one, if you've been on previous weeks, we're going to go a little deeper because ISeeChange was actually founded and focused on flooding. We've expanded into talking about all aspects of infrastructure, your built and your natural environment, but a lot of our work was grounded in flooding. So we're excited to share with you, how we've seen people in New Orleans and in other parts of the country track flooding over time. And a lot of these things will tie in pretty directly with what Megan was talking about, the way the city's situated, tracking that stormwater infrastructure, tracking storms. And so we'll dive in. One of the things that is helpful when you want to track a storm is actually being able to look ahead. When is it time to think about, we're going to just talk about, kind of like the late afternoon, the mid-afternoon monsoon season storms that are going to be rolling in. We've had a pretty dry April, but we'll start rolling in May and last throughout the course of the summer and into the fall. Reading radar can be a really useful tool. It's not specific, it's not exact, but getting familiar with how you can do that can help when it's time to be alert, stay alert for flooding. One of the things to look out for is some warning signs. So a slow moving storm. So if the radar is moving, not too quickly over the city, sustained and high intensity of rainfall. So this is going to be, those reds, those yellows, oranges, the worst case, the purples that show up in the radar, wide coverage of a storm cell. So this is like tapping into when our systems get overwhelmed with the consistency of rainfall or unusual radar patterns. So this was actually just a few days ago. I think this was, mid-April. Oh no, sorry, this one's not. This was last year. But if we're looking at this, there's a few key signature things that we're seeing here. Drop in the chat or unmute. What are you guys noticing about this radar pattern right now? Feel free to unmute as well.
It's fairly slow moving.
Slow moving, definitely. Anyone else got one?
Really big.
Covering a broad area.
Yeah.
Slow moving. We've got some mild rain intensity, wide coverage. So a lot of, didn't mean to cut anyone off. They want to jump in.
Intensity is staying green.
Right. So that intensity too. So these things can just help you be aware of when we're going to be most at risk for flooding. Intensity over time is often what you look for. And this is, a helpful tool in being aware. It's not going to tell you when it actually floods. There are some tools that have been built. NOAA's Atlas 14 is a helpful one. If you guys are you might already be familiar with this if you're a weather geek like us on this call often are. They're providing us with something called a recurrence interval. And this is how often, with the amount of rainfall you get in a certain amount of time, this storm might be anticipated each year. So for example, they provide this chart, which I've kind of hidden most of it because it's a lot of numbers, for every single location in the United States. So depending on its unique characteristics, you can see how much rain and how much time it will take for that to be categorized as a storm, a certain type of storm. So here we've got, if we were to get 1.5 inches of rainfall in 30 minutes, this is a once in, that's a typo, my bad. That's a once in 1 year storm. And that would be a 1% chance of happening every year. So what does that look like in New Orleans? We've been measuring this for several years. And this is an example where several people throughout the city were measuring a once in 1 year storm. You can see just a little bit of puddling. Certain areas look like they're flooding a little bit. And you can see how even with the same event, which was in 2019 on July 20th, people in different parts of the city are experiencing dramatically different levels of rainfall, so different inch measurements. Now let's look at a different storm. So this is 2019 April, around an average of 3.4 inches of rain in 3 hours. This is a 1 in 2 year storm, 50% chance of happening every year. And what does this look like throughout the city? So we've got certain people measuring pretty different things. So we've got a 1 to 2 year storm measured in this part of the city, a 1 year storm, a 2 to 5 year storm. And the reason this is happening is because depending on localized rainfall and what you're actually measuring, you're going to experience dramatically different rainstorm intensities. So let's look at, I think actually Megan referenced this earlier in the call, not positive, but this is a pretty significant rain event. This was July of 2019 again, but a different storm. And on average, around 10 to 11 inches of rain fell in different parts of the city over 6 hours. This is a 1 in 100 year storm. And ISeeChangers reported, again, some people reported 9 inches of flooding, some people were recording 6 inches, 5 inches, and depending on where you are, that looks quite different. And each types of these storms are, going to be dramatically different in severity, and what our actual infrastructure can handle is quite different. So if we jump back to the 1 inch measurements, these storms happen every year. This is where it's really helpful to use green infrastructure, plant your gardens, have rain gardens, rain barrels, things that homeowners and business owners can do here on a wide scale across the city can make a big difference. When you have a 2 to 5 year storm interval, this is where our projects like the Gentilly Resilience District and other larger projects can really make a difference in mitigating the impacts of these storms. And when you have these larger events, that's where we're asking questions about how can we better live with water? How do you mitigate a 1 in 100 year storm? Because you can see the impacts are quite, they're more dramatic. And this is also highlighting the importance of why rain gauges can really play a major role in helping us understand how hyper-local differences are throughout the city of how people are experiencing a storm. Rain gauges are actually, they're just a plastic, tool. They're not expensive. You can get one, or you can email me and we will send you one to track rain with us. But they're extremely powerful. The National Weather Service actually uses rain gauges all across the country to ground truth their rain data. And they provide really, really key insights on what people are experiencing block to block. So we have ISeeChangers who've been using them to record inches of rainfall, and also just, keep us updated on like when a storm stops and when it starts and stops, so that we can understand what caliber of storm that is. There are a lot of other key things to look for when you're reporting flooding. So how long did it take for flooding to recede? What damage have you experienced from a flood? And how high were floodwaters, which you can use by measuring, use a ruler to take a measurement, or you could compare it to something on your street, such as like a tire or a curb. So here we see someone is reporting the extent of flooding. You can see that in the photo, how it's impacted their ability to move around town, measurements of the exact flood height in inches, and also comparing it to, this was ankle level, close to halfway on their truck tires. And then they also reported how often it happened and the extent of the flood start and stop time. A great way to track this is, if you especially don't want to go outside during a flood, is to track it from your front porch. You can document the same spot over time. You can take measurements if you're able to, and this can really help us understand how certain areas are responding to certain storms and so forth. You can also think about drainage issues. I know most of us here are aware and always keeping an eye on catch basins on your street. So first question is, are there enough catch basins on your street? May they be obstructed? So construction, debris, leaves, trash, or construction debris. Are they clear, but they're not draining properly? These are all important things to think about. This person actually was sharing a really cool mechanism of how they're hopefully trying to keep out construction debris from the catch basin. And here we're looking at another post where they're reporting the flooding over time, infrastructure updates, and they think that there's something deeper going on, and then also reporting how long the flooding lasted. So all critical details in tracking the extent of the flood. With flood tracking, we are also looking at soil saturation and puddling. So, radar is one predictive way that you can see if in that day, maybe a storm might be headed your way. Another thing to be aware of when you're anticipating a flood is how much has it rained in the past few days? If it's been raining a lot and your soil is really saturated, or if it hasn't rained at all, the soil is going to be less capable to absorb water in the way that it normally would. And this can lead to a higher risk of flooding. So if soil's really dry, really wet, how much is puddling around your neighborhood is important to track. So here someone is also tracking the puddling, the rainfall, the frequency of the rain events, worried about future tropical storms. And here you can also see this is right next to, rallies, but and we're thinking about also, with the stormwater fee, like how is this parking lot contributing to runoff on our street with water in our blocks. So you can document a puddle, track that over time. We can also think about evaluating infrastructure. So here on the right, someone was reporting that this is actually in a different city in New Jersey, but they had a flood remediation project, and they were noticing that they had before the fixed water would be gushing down the street. They want to expand the project. So we could see like how is your neighborhood doing before? If you're living near some of these gentility resilience district projects, you could think about starting to track now and seeing how things change over time. We also, of course, want to hear about your solutions. So what are your creative parking solutions? How are you protecting your cars, your homes from a flood? Hurricane preparedness ideas? Are you installing your own rain garden, or are you interested in Nora's community adaptation program? Thinking about other places for public storage, maybe like a park. Here we've got someone who is dealing with a lot of impervious solutions, but they're making some door dams ahead of the tropical storm. They're not having a lot of drainage. So, it's kind of a little bit of everything. Like if you're finding your ways to deal with flooding in your block, sharing it on ISeeChange is a great way to build community knowledge, or you can ask questions as well. So if you're experiencing an issue, maybe see how neighbors are dealing with that. Just to kind of bring this full circle as to why your flooding data can really go a long way. ISeeChange was used in the St. Bernard area ahead of one of the projects Meagan mentioned with the Gentility Resilience District. We worked to work with a lot of community members in St. Bernard area, and we saw over 4 times, we quadrupled public participation. So we were able to hear from more people on what they were experiencing. We documented almost 30 flood events that were outside of what modelers were expecting for that time frame. And then we were able to work with the city and Stantec to redirect more money to the project, expand by a few blocks the project boundary. And the project is now up to $4.8 million in the budget. So we really want to be able to work with community members to collect this data and show like where this funding is needed. So as we've been doing each week, but this is our last session, we're going into flood season. It's been a little bit dry recently, but we know that probably won't remain the case, unfortunately. So as you enter into the summer, we want to know when and where are you seeing flooding in your neighborhood? How are your drains functioning, especially during like a heavy downpour? And are there enough drains? And if your neighborhood floods, what solution would you like to see? Show us a block that could use rain gardens, trees, or pervious pavers. We want to know, what solutions you're interested in your area. We also are going to be hosting more of our infrastructure walks. We call them pep walks and community garden parties or parties in the next few weeks. We're doing them in a few different neighborhoods across the city. Because you're on this webinar, you will definitely receive an invite, and we would love to see you there. We're documenting people's priorities, doing little trainings and workshops, and then also enjoying really great food and music and company. So we'd love to see you there. Just keep your eye on your email inbox for that information, or reach out to one of us. And here is me, Sage, and Nellie's contact information. If you haven't yet, please sign up for ISeeChange. Let us know what priorities you have in your neighborhood. You've maybe been with us for the whole series, but at least on flooding, you know, having your eyes on the ground is really helpful and can go a long way. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Caroline. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Y'all, we finished right on a snap of time, but we did want to leave it open. Thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions or comments for Caroline, let us know. And Caroline, thank you for showing us that example of how ISeeChange platform has worked locally. And I know you all have worked across the United States as well, in some other places as well. So thank you for showing us that example. I work in our own community. Yes, that's right, Miss Lane. Take a picture of that. Get that QR code right. Log it on. Become an ISeeChanger today. Yep, I appreciate you all. Nelly, you want to give the closing words for us? And when our
No, this
partners.
has been really fantastic. We are thrilled to be continuing in the work at the Committee for a Better New Orleans and bringing resident voice back to the center of infrastructure decision making. You can stick with us even after this series ends, both by posting on ISeeChange and continuing to participate in this project. We are also doing a bunch of work to help educate folks about what's going on with the infrastructure funds. I've dropped that link in a couple of times at cbno.org/IIJA. We're keeping pretty close track of what the city's got going on. We also post regular blog updates when there are opportunities to plug in. And finally, we're working on an initiative to develop recommendations for how to equitably apply for and distribute and plan infrastructure projects as we are ready for this influx to come in. If you're interested in getting involved in that, please shoot me an email, nellie@cbno.org, to get more information about our Building Equity Collaborative. The last thing I'll say is we do have a post-meeting survey. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in to the chat. If you have 2 seconds to fill it out, it will take a very short time. Oh, and did I close the tab? Yes, I did. Gonna find it. Here it is. Go ahead and fill that out if you have just 2 minutes. It helps us to get better at this program and also to be great stewards of the support that we got for this from grant funders. So please fill that out. Let us know if this was useful. And thank you.
Thank you all for attending this series. I see a lot of familiar faces that have been with the series the whole time. You know, I know you're off camera, but I'm off camera. I'm giving y'all a hand clap. Thank y'all for everyone participated, for all the work you've done, all our presenters. Thank you, Meagan Williams, for joining on, closing us out, and let's have a beautiful, wonderful afternoon. Yeah.
Also, these are all archived on YouTube, and if you want to share them out to your friends, your peoples, your orgs, do that. I'm catching the last of it, and I'm gonna watch the beginning of it.
Yes, it's gonna be a great Netflix series. Get your popcorn, get your nachos, get your quesadilla. Queso.
Amazing. Megan, that shirt looks great. I love that color on you, girl.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, go ahead and enjoy the last of the day, y'all.
All right, have a good one,
Bye,
y'all.
Thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Megan, so much for talking with us.
I think you might just have to go in on get a little nudge, you know.
Removed
Look,
them. Also said you gotta go to Frenchman Street. You gotta get out of here. We can
like,
do this.
Luke, let's get to the other way right quick.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. So crazy. We had a low attendance, right? But we had some.
okay.
It was like the saddest attendance out. But hey, we did a series for our first time doing a series. we had repeat of people who came. So those people are well educated. Like I said, it's always not about the quantity, you got the quality. But these things are recorded, right? Which is so nice is that you could sit this to a group of people and
Mhm.
play this now.
Right,
Remember we wanted to do a record, now we got the flooding record.
right. And we got the slides, like if we ever wanted to do a community workshop on trash, we could just be like, you know, you could still do grounding, you could still bring in someone to talk about it, but it's like, all right, let's, like there's a lot of things I think we could do from here, depending on which focus we're exploring.
So I'm
I
thinking
sorry,
that
I feel like I made the flooding part a little confusing. I stumbled a little bit, but
no, you were great. Everything right on time. I heard it, everyone heard it. I didn't catch anything off, so
yeah,
and
it's a
I'm
little
I'm I'm
technical.
a
I'm still
critique.
learning it myself. So I was like, I think I
I'm a
just,
critiquer, so it's all nobody called. Sometimes it's like, oh, nobody knows you made a mistake but yourself.
mm, yeah,
But it's okay. No one gonna hold it as critical,
yeah.
But I think you did great. You become a very well presenter, you're getting comfortable. That's
Thanks.
cool. I
I
like
really
that.
appreciated your grounding too. I think, it's always nice on a topic like this too, to just set that stage.
It helped. It helped. So it helped. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think Megan presented well. She was nice.
yeah,
Pace was nice. She was interested. She gave a lot of great information, showing some graphics that made you look at it, right? I think that was interesting. Comparison graphs.